Good morning. It is Friday morning. It's around 8:30 in the morning. I've been up since about 6. Took this little dude for a walk, made a smoothie, did some laundry. So it's been a very productive morning. But I thought that this morning I could bring you along for a little health update, as well as just share sort of my journey with chronic illnesses while I get ready this morning. So let's do it. So my husband and I got married in 2016 in October, and during our honeymoon I really just started to feel a little bit weird, just really exhausted, and just I started developing these rashes and these blisters all over my hips and my legs. And so once we got home, I thought I was just exhausted from getting married and from traveling and, doing all of the planning for all of the months before. And so I just, tried to rest as much as I could and move on. And about 2 months later, I think it was around the holidays, my husband got the flu. And I developed a 104-degree fever out of nowhere, and really just, again, thought that I had the flu. Clearly, I'm not very good at multitasking, so this shall be interesting. But I thought that I just had the flu, and so just sort of tried to ride that out. And after about 2 weeks, the 104-degree fever did not go away. And so at that moment, I started to see a ton of different specialists. I saw infectious disease, saw rheumatology, cardiology, neurology, because I also had this migraine that was a 10 out of 10 worst headache that I had ever had. I was struggling with sitting up and using just any level of strength within my body. Everything came back fine. I had, a handful of elevated rheumatological labs, but nothing definitive. And so I basically just had to complete this evaluation to see if I could go back to work, which I barely passed, and just pushed through. I continued to have those 104-degree daily fevers. I had unbelievable brain fog. The fatigue was crazy. But I just figured this is sort of how I have to live my life. So that is what I continued to do. A handful of months later, we moved out to Colorado, which had been a plan all along. And once we got out here, I decided to start the health journey all over again. So at that time, I saw neurology, rheumatology, cardiology, the whole 9 yards again. And a handful of months later, I was diagnosed with myalgic encephalomyelitis, and also was scheduled to have surgery on my spine for a herniated disc. So fast forward a little bit longer, rheumatology diagnosed me with connective tissue disease. And then from there, I started to modify my diet. So I changed up, I no longer was eating gluten. And then from there, I removed dairy, and we added Plaquenil and a handful of other medications at the time, which really allowed me to get back to some level of baseline. I was feeling better than I had since getting sick. And so I just hunkered down and just, acclimated to that new lifestyle. I focused on pacing, trying to keep my heart rate in a good spot, not using too much energy, all of those types of things. So that brought me to last year, so January of 2024. Also, don't mind this lovely spot of toothpaste drool. There's that. So in January of 2024, so a little over a year ago, we got our bill from the water company. Clearly, I'm very much struggling with brain fog this morning. I cannot find my words. Anyway, we got our water bill in the mail and found out that we had a slow leak in our primary bathroom for the last month or so, which ended up leading to mold, and a slew of some new symptoms for me. So I started to break out in rashes along my arms, along my face, and the brain fog came back, fatigue, the fevers, everything was sort of back. So I decided to start seeing doctors again, which is always just such an emotional, it's an emotional undertaking. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of money, and you are often not taken seriously by doctors. And so I just had to do a lot to sort of get myself back into a space to where I was ready to see doctors again. So fast forward, we did all the testing in the world. We did lumbar punctures, we did MRIs of my brain, my spine, my cervical and thoracic part of my spine, all the blood panels, just you name it, we did it. I finally started to see a naturopath, and that is when I was diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome and chronic inflammatory response syndrome, seemingly both from the mold exposure in my home. So mast cell activation syndrome really has to do with sort of your like allergic reaction, and everybody has a bucket of histamine that they can tolerate throughout the day, and mine is already full. And so foods in high histamine will cause me to react. It's overflowing that bucket. And pressure changes, weather changes, just, you know, trying to exist in life can sort of flare up the mast cell activation syndrome. And then for the chronic inflammatory response syndrome, we're doing a protocol of a variety of different supplements and then a toxin binder. I think it's called cholestyramine. I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But anyway, so we are trying to bind the toxins to remove them from my body. So those are the naturopath things. And then fast forward, I'm on a cruise in February of 2025, and we notice a little nodule on my elbow here. So when I got back from the cruise, I saw rheumatology, and we hypothesized that my connective tissue disease is morphing into rheumatoid arthritis. I also developed a mass on my chest wall, not on my breasts. And so that is currently under evaluation. So anyway, long story short, it has been 2016, it's 2025. So it has been a 9-year journey. I cannot do math, clearly. A 9-year journey with chronic illness, and it feels like we are only just beginning to scratch the surface. Along the way, I started to develop some other symptoms for my other systems as well. I had palpitations, heart palpitations. So we've done a number of echocardiograms and heart monitors over the years to see sort of what's going on, because the autoimmune diseases that I have can impact your other organs. So my most recent heart monitor showed that I had premature atrial contractions and premature ventricular contractions, which can be caused by rheumatoid arthritis. And so I actually just finished up a 3-week MCOT monitor, which is a little bit more granular than the Holter. That friggin' smoothie is making me drool. Anyway, so waiting to see the results on that. I also did a echo stress test a couple of weeks ago. I'm very out of breath. That's another one of my heart symptoms, is just a lot of shortness of breath. So we did an echo stress test a couple of weeks ago, and I only lasted 3 minutes before I almost fainted. So we're going to try to do a nuclear stress test, which basically is just a medicated way to get your heart rate up to, I think it's like 156, in order for them to be able to diagnose anything that might be going on there. So that's the heart piece. The chest wall mass, we've done an ultrasound and an x-ray. So next up, we're going to do an MRI with and without contrast. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And then I just saw neurology yesterday because I'm having some new numbness and tingling in my different types that I'm used to in my hands and my arms. Also having some numbness in the middle of my back, and then like an eye twitch or an eye flutter that's been going on for about 6 weeks now. So we're going to get that checked out. Also going to do an MRI with and without contrast. It's been, I think my last brain MRI was last July. So just going to see what's going on there and just keep powering forward. Got a lot going on health-wise. So just trying to figure out what some good next steps are before we get too far ahead of ourselves. So clearly I did not do a great job of multitasking and trying to share my story while getting ready. So I am ready. So I'm gonna just do a quick recap because I think I left out a very large portion. 2016, that is when all my symptoms started. Saw multiple specialists, couldn't figure out what was going on. Ended up with connective tissue disease and myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is a diagnosis of exclusion. So basically you have to test for everything. Diagnosis of elimination, I guess, is eliminate all of the other potential possibilities. So operated like that for a few years until we had a mold situation in my house, which prompted us to sort of start over, which is when I was diagnosed with dysautonomia and POTS. I still had the myalgic encephalomyelitis and connective tissue disease, but now the connective tissue disease is progressing into rheumatoid arthritis. And dang, what is the other piece? Oh, potentially lupus as well. And then I've got the chest wall mass that we are going to get evaluated here in a couple of weeks. I also have to get a colonoscopy and endoscopy because when I did that in 2017, we found some polyps and colon cancer runs in my family. Follow up with my heart stuff. Next step is nuclear stress test. My dad did pass away from heart failure in 2023, so also just want to keep a very close eye on that. So my current diagnoses are small fiber neuropathy. I forgot about that one. So small fiber neuropathy, dysautonomia, POTS, rheumatoid arthritis, connective tissue disease, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I think that's it. I think that's it for now. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to continuing to share my journey as well as just really pour into this community. It is the community that saved me along the way. Even when you have a really great support system, there is nothing like having a community of people who truly understand and who go through similar experiences on a daily basis. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.